No, yeah. Would you like to be the slate? Go for it.
Actually, Frankie.
No, you wanted.
I'll be the slate.
You've already
I'll be the
volunteered
slate.
yourself.
3, 2, 1. Action.
Live from the Park Rapids Library. Today on the Northwestern Voices podcast, we have Kitchen Sink, which is an acting troupe that was founded in 2024 right here in Park Rapids. And it consists of these 3 fine people. And I'm going to say all their names, and hopefully I don't make any mistakes along the way. So, Lorri Jager, Frankie Jager, and Faith Kern. And
You nailed it.
did I nail it?
Yeah,
you
Okay.
did.
All
You
right.
did.
I wasn't sure if there was some silent J's in there maybe, or any other tricky things there, but no. Okay. So, are you the 3 founding members and sole members?
Founding.
Founding.
We are
Not
the founding.
soul.
Okay.
We have a board.
Yes.
Oh, you do?
We're the
Yes.
co-artistic directors.
The co-artistic directors. Okay. So, what, first of all, let's just start with Kitchen Sink. What is it, and why did you guys decide to start it?
You're the best at this one.
Okay, well, we've been working on grant applications, so I've actually been working on writing this, but let's see what I remember of it. Kitchen Sink Realism is a British art movement from the 80s.
Okay.
And it's centered around kind of the working class people in their homes and dealing with their very average person issues and their disillusionment with their society and their culture and their politics and stuff like that. And so it started as a British movement, but there are a lot of American plays that kind of fit within the same genre as well.
Okay.
And those are a lot of the kinds of stories that we're interested in telling, which is why we chose the name based off of that.
Okay. And it's an acting troupe, right? I mean, or what would you call it?
We're technically
call it
a
a
production
production
company.
Okay.
We want to keep it pretty broad so that we can do whatever we want to with it. If we wanted to branch into film or whatever form of production we want to do, at this point we're focusing on theater.
Live theater.
Yep.
Okay.
Live performance.
And so Kitchen Sink that's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that it was a movement, like an art movement. You said.
Yeah. Yep.
Are there any kind of names or anything that are associated with it, or you said it started in the UK, or what was the?
It did. It actually, it was in the 1950s that it started.
My apologies.
So,
Yeah.
And I don't know the names off the top of my head of the people who started that movement, but plays that people may be familiar with that are sort of kitchen sink realism. Can you list some titles that come to mind for you?
Yes. Well, Sam Shepard, a lot of his plays, so True West, and I forget all the other names of his plays.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Tennessee Williams, August Osage County,
That was Tracy Letts.
Tracy Letts, shows in that vein. Those are some pretty...
Beth Henley's Crimes of the Heart.
Yeah,
That's when we
Crimes
did a
of the Heart.
scene.
We did a scene from that one.
Yeah.
So what are
Think about the
like
others,
you
yeah.
said the fundamental characteristics of the movement were they were telling stories of sort of the
working class that's disillusioned with their society.
Okay.
It's like the
It's sort of-
mundane day-to-day of average people.
Yeah.
People that, we bring the audience like right into the backyard or the kitchen of this family that is going through whatever they're going through. And Arthur Miller is another one.
Yes.
So
Arthur
Death of a Salesman.
Crucible.
Or,
He wrote that. I don't know if it's part of that.
The Crucible. I was thinking of All My Sons. Takes place in the family's backyard.
Yep.
Okay.
Or whatever. So
they're domestic scenes mainly.
Yep.
yeah, it's usually a unit set, so there's not scene changes.
Okay.
But it's usually a lot
So that
of
would be
drama.
another characteristic of it. Yeah.
There's a lot of drama. It's like high drama kind of, as opposed to, you can tell like Chicago is a story about women incarcerated for crimes against men, and Crimes of the Heart by Beth Henley is also that, but it's just two different genres exploring those themes.
Well, and whereas like a musical like Chicago is pretty fantastic, it sounds like these kinds of works are a little bit more grounded in reality.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
okay, yeah.
Yes.
It is a realism art movement. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And what inspired you guys to get involved with that kind of production as opposed to any other?
Well, I didn't know that it was a genre until Frankie came home from formal training and told us about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was exposed. I mean, I think I actually probably first remember seeing it when we went to a production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in Moorhead
NDSU.
at NDSU.
Yep. That Tennessee Williams there, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that was the first show that I remember seeing within that genre. And then in community college as well, I did a advanced theater class in Brainerd, CLC, where we went down. Well, we would read a play and discuss it as a class, and then we'd go down and view it in the Twin Cities. And there was a company. I don't know if they're still going, but their name was Dark and Stormy Productions, and they were doing. They are fantastic. I think they were pretty new at this point. I don't remember if it was 2016 maybe is when I went to it. And they did a Sam Shepard show, and I can't remember what the title was. It was not True West, though. And that one was really inspirational. And that one specifically, it was since the company was pretty young, and they didn't have, from my perception, they didn't have a lot of funding. The room that they had chosen was basically a warehouse. It was just an empty warehouse, and then they had folding chairs in like a U shape. And then there was just a bedroom set in the middle of this U shape, and that was the playing space. And I think it was a
very basic set. It
was very basic, and it was a 2-person cast. Maybe there was 1 or 2 other characters that came in, but it was very stripped down, pared down, and I loved it. And it was so impactful, and it was a small audience because there was just a few folding chairs at a time. And yeah, it was so impactful to me, and I knew that that was something that I'd love to be able to be part of someday. And then when I went to New York, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan for my formal training in acting. And I got more experience with scene work and exposure to plays and stuff like that. And that's where I kind of learned more about the genre that I was really interested in. And then I brought the information home, and then I convinced them to like it too.
So how did you go about doing that, convincing them to like it? I mean, what is it that attracts you to this particular style of theater?
I think I just really like the content. I like the style of commentary on life, and I think it's something...
Is it grim?
It doesn't have to be. I think something that I do love about it, though, is that it allows us to talk about the parts of life that are really unpleasant and that are not attractive, which are pretty taboo, especially in rural areas. We don't have a lot of opportunity to be exposed to those things in the live theater context anyway. And that was something that I really liked about it, and I think probably growing up here and not having exposure to that is part of why I liked it so much. And then I don't know that it really took any convincing. I mean, it was probably just explaining what it was and that there was a specific genre for what we were interested in.
I had experienced, as a stage manager at CLC, we did All My Sons. So I had experienced that, and I, at one point, this was in a different context. I was talking about a film with Frankie, and she noted, she's like, you don't watch things for the art, you watch it for the concepts. And that is true. That's like, I'm looking for the concepts in things or whatever.
So Lorri, what's your background in theater and kind of like, what is your sort of, what are you bringing to the table here, as far as your participation in this? I
was never involved in theater until my kids needed rides to rehearsal for Carousel in 2013 or 2014, I think, for Northern Light Opera Company. And I kind of got swept into it, and I liked the backstage choreography, the way scene changes happened and stuff. And within a few years, I knew nothing else. So when I was out on stage in the ensemble, I didn't know anything. That was uncomfortable. When I was backstage, that made sense to me.
Yeah.
And
So you like to focus more on the technical side of the production?
at the beginning, I did. That was my in. As you know, I could organize the prop table, and I could help choreograph the scene changes and do the heavy lifting, and that stuff I knew how to do. I could paint, and Lisa invited me to be the stage manager. I didn't know what it was at all. By then, my son was a PSEO student over at Central Lakes College, and I went to the theater professor and I said, "What is this job?" And he gave me some books, and so that's how I learned how to do the job, and that's sort of what I did for like the last 10 years or 6 years or whatever. And now I'm
Long
done with
time.
that. Now I'm done with the stage managing part. It's a great job because you get to watch all the artists doing everything, and you learn a little bit about how it all, lighting,
How the
design,
sausage is made,
sound
right?
design.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I'm playing.
Yeah, it's having been involved in Northern Light Opera Company myself, it amazed me how just how much logistics goes into all of it, because there's so many things that you don't think about.
The 90% of the glacier that you never see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it must be a satisfying feeling to be involved in the production from that perspective.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to exclude Faith here. So, Faith, what is your background and what is your role in Kitchen Sink?
Well, most people know me as an actor. Started acting here in the area when I was a little child. And then into adulthood, I started directing through a 4-H program that I was involved in. And then as I graduated out of that program, I decided to start my own program through the 4-H umbrella and started my own kids theater company. Ran that for 2 or 3 years, and then COVID hit, and lots of life stuff happened where that just wasn't plausible anymore. Started directing film. That's crazy, and I'm still doing that. But I, like these lovely ladies, also have a passion for telling stories that are impactful to people, that make us think, that make us feel, and that's why I'm here.
Okay. So, why acting? What inspired you to get involved with acting as opposed to anything else? What drew you to it? It could be either one of you.
I think for me, well, I was homeschooled growing up. We both were.
Yeah.
And through the homeschool co-op, I got exposed to educational theater, and it's different than if you're in high school and public school. The theater program is it's very different than that. And so it was huge casts of 50 kids crammed into a show that was built for 20 people. And so I think it was a relatively abnormal introduction to theater, but it's a fantastic one. I'm very grateful that is offered here in this community, because otherwise I don't know that we really would have had that much exposure to theater. And then I was also a dancer. I grew up training classically with Denise Gold-Bronson when she had a studio, and then she retired, and then another studio came in, and I completed my education through high school with them. And I think through my varied interests, they all tended to gravitate toward performing arts. And then as I was kind of completing high school and transitioning into adulthood, I knew that I wanted that to still be a part of my life, because it had just been such a big part of my growing up and education and how I socialized with people. So I think that was my in for it. Yeah.
What do you like about it? Faith.
I agree with the relationships. I think that's what you were getting at. The friendships and relationships that you build while you're doing a show. That's incredibly rewarding. For me, it's this is gonna sound so cheesy. It's like the moment when I feel what a character would be feeling. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
For that one little tiny
It's
sliver
a
of
rush.
a moment.
Yeah.
It's a rush, and I love it. And I think that's another thing that draws me to the more realistic theater as opposed to like caricature type musicals, etc.
Yeah.
Not all musicals, I will say. There are a few that are like next to normal.
But it's not normal for people to be
stuff.
just breaking out in song in the middle of a conversation.
Yep. There are some writers. I don't know if you're familiar with the musical Next to Normal, but that is one where I separate that from all other musicals because it's, anyways, topic for another time. But yeah, that's why I'm doing it. And for me as a director, it's the moment when I see an actor feel that moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so I want to get into directing in a second here, but when it comes to acting, I always thought acting was kind of an interesting art form because acting is like you're good at it when you're not doing it, basically, right? Like if you're baking, you'd be good at baking if you baked well,
Sure.
right? but in acting, especially with like the method acting and things like that, where they say basically that you're not acting. Acting is not acting, right?
It's when you're transformed into that character.
So, I've looked at this. I read a book by Sanford Meisner. Do you guys know who Sanford Meisner is? And
Big
the
Meisner.
the foundation of acting is the reality of doing. Is something that
Can I
Sanford Meisner
Can
said.
I actually add to that? Because in my training, it's Meisner based. My training was Meisner based,
Okay.
and my acting teacher in my second year, the man that I learned a lot from. I won't say everything from, but a lot from. He had a rule, and he would say this, like when we first started training with him, he would say it all the time, and then eventually he would ask us, and we had to respond, and then it was like a rule. We all had to know it. And it was, the foundation of all good acting is listening.
Oh.
And that it is based off of Meisner's teaching. And I mean, Meisner technique is all about listening and responding.
Yeah.
It's about receiving what you're being given and responding to that. And that is the training that I based off of, which is a bit different than, I mean, there's lots of methods for acting, but that is the one that I'm familiar with. And yeah, it's all about telling the truth. And even though it is within fictitious circumstances, you're being someone that you're not, you have a script that you're basing it off of, it's all about telling the truth in the moment, though.
And you're actually, so like the thing that struck me about that quote when I was reading that book is that it's very simple. You're not acting as though you're holding a pice of paper, right? Even if the script calls for it, you're actually just holding the piece of paper. You're doing it.
Yep.
And I'm not sure where acting comes into it, but so again, it's sort of like where acting is like the elimination of acting is the perfection of it.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Good quote.
Okay, yeah. Can we get that one copyrighted, Caleb? Let's write to the office and get that trademarked.
Really square up.
So how do you guys as actors prepare for a role? I mean, like as far as from the point where, and we'll talk about the selection of the play itself, material itself, but let's just say here's the script for a play you'll be doing, right? So what's the first thing that you do, and how do you kind of develop to the point where you're ready to perform?
And you want that from the actor's perspective right now?
From the actor's perspective right now, yeah.
Which Lorri did just perform very recently, and I'm actually
Oh, so okay, so then why don't you explain what you do then? Yeah.
Well, for this particular production, it was Frankie's debut as director.
Okay.
And she limited me what I was allowed to do for dramaturgy.
Because your career in the theatrical sphere has been research and dramaturgy and preparation.
And she didn't want me to go too deep, too fast. And so let's see, what did I mean, reading the script several times through, because you know how when you watch a film and now you know the story and you go back and there's all these new things that you keep discovering. Every time you read it, you discover new things.
Yeah.
So a lot of reading it. I like to get really familiar with the language, not to be off book, but to be really familiar with the language in order to be able to like make eye contact with my castmates and figure out what those connections feel like. I was allowed to do a little bit of dramaturgy. It took me a while. So the character that
Define
I played-
dramaturgy, please, for those of us who
So
don't know
it's-
what that is.
doing the research to figure out what the world of the play and your character was really like.
Okay.
So in this particular role that I played in Two Rooms was Ellen Van Ost, and it took me a while to figure out that what I was doing was looking at a character who was born at the same time as my mother, went to college at the same time as my mother, and was in her 40s in the 80s at the same time as my mother, and just to to think back and look at the track that women have been on and what it was like to be in college in the 60s and this woman had a career, like a high power career that was not in my realm of experience or my mother's realm of experience, but to look at that, it was fascinating to me. So figuring out what
Just
that
kind of
character was
absorbing
like.
the script, the character, and
Yes, and I mean, this person, like, she had a career that I didn't even know what kind of college degree you would need in order to become that. So figuring that out and to wrap your mind about what she was.
There's a lot of research, it sounds
figure out
like.
what her lines meant, what is she saying, and what does she. So line intention, figuring out line intention in the script.
Like in music, there's markings, where they'll say, crescendo or so you know exactly how the composer wants you to perform, right?
Right.
But in plays and stuff like that, and I may be wrong about this because I'm sure that some playwrights do a little bit more of that, but it seems to me like basically what you get is direction that you say this and then you say that and then you say this and then you say that, right? And you don't really know. I mean, I guess you could know from tradition how you're supposed to play the role, but
even when the stage directions say this person walks into the room, how do they walk into the room?
Yeah.
Why do they walk into the room? In what way? How are they feeling?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Yes.
So when you're doing this research, is your aim to be as true to the playwright's intention as you possibly can be, or is this more of like an independent type of analysis research to produce your a unique interpretation? I mean, how true or loyal are you trying to be to the writer of the play?
I suppose that answer could depend on the company and the director. I think we were going for authenticity to figure out the playwright's intention.
Okay.
And
I think for the most part, it's somewhat of a marriage of the two.
Yeah.
And I think generally, especially in my training, it was very emphasized that your job is to be true to the playwright.
Right.
And also bring your own personal interpretation and work with the truth of the situation that you're in. So whatever the playwright had in mind was based off of factors that are now out of their control. So you take into consideration what they had in mind and the factors that you're actually working with, and then you bring them together.
Okay.
can I bring in my Edward Albee quote?
Sure.
So Edward Albee was the playwright for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And apparently, I've heard from several people who actually saw him in person or whatever. He was very irascible, or whatever. But he had this way of using language, and he talked about how a playwright puts out their piece of art, and the director is going to corrupt it. They're either going to corrupt it good or they're going to corrupt it bad, but they're going to corrupt it. It's never going to be exactly what the playwright had in mind. And then the actors are going to, take it farther than that or whatever. So, So part of dramaturgy also is figuring out who the playwright was, what the intention probably was, past productions of the show, how they've been done, things like that,
It seems like being a playwright is something that it involves just a lot of control, It's like
giving up a lot of control.
In your mind, you can be like, I'm going to set up this scenario, and then everybody's going to do exactly as I say, and they're going to say exactly as I say, and it's like a very controlling exercise, isn't it?
Tennessee Williams, if you read his scripts, there's a lot of stage directions in there. And then, what was her name? Lauren, that wrote Silent Sky. Not a lot of stage directions in
Yeah.
there. So it's sort of more like, I'm going to put this out into the world and let it be. And so as an actor, when I read the script, it's like, okay, this is very like black and white and not filled in right here. And then you see the play come off the page as you put it together. It kind of comes to life or whatever.
So what's your technique for memorization?
I have many of them.
Okay.
My favorite one, that Frankie has given me. She was watching me. She was watching me memorize a monologue once, and my husband Kelly was helping me clean lines or whatever. And she came into the kitchen and she's like, "Why are you sitting? Get up and move."
Just
so
like
getting muscle memory, like walk the script. So it was
Okay.
a technique that she brought home and showed me, and it helped immensely.
Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about memorizing and what growing up for me and being in educational theater programs with lots of actors in them and one person directing them, they can't teach every single person how to work on what works for them. And so you learn to go memorize, and then you go off and try to do whatever that is. And you read through it, you say the words, and you do all of this stuff. And then I went to school and I learned that really what memorizing is getting words in your body. And if you're not up and using your body or moving your body or allowing your body to be involved in the process, then it's all just about your brain working really hard, kind of.
Yeah.
And you can't turn it into muscle memory that you can then let go of everything and rely on. And it's all about working super hard up here. So I think getting up on your feet and moving around, that gets it in your body.
Doesn't matter what the role or what you're trying to memorize. It could be a poem, it could be anything, right?
And I mean, you can do it in as structured or loose of a way as you want. There are some really specific techniques and exercises that can be really useful for not just memorizing or getting it in your body, but also kind of breaking down and learning more, finding out more about what the author meant and why they wrote it the way that they did. Punctuation is huge. You can learn so much from punctuation. And it's one thing to look at it and see it, but then it's another thing to get up on your feet and let it be in your body. So you can use punctuation to shift your movement, and that can be really influential in what the meaning of the text is. But yeah,
so pairing word with an action in some way is going to help with memorization.
Yep, and also you can do it in still ways. There is a technique called Alexander technique, which involves use of self. It's like how we use our bodies, and that was developed by an Australian man named Frederick Alexander, I believe. And he was a Shakespearean actor, but he also served in the military. And the military is very much about being upright and straight and posture. And that's actually very inhibiting to like health of your body and your voice. And so he found that when he was trying to perform, he would strain his voice so badly that he couldn't speak. And so he was like, okay, I have to find a solution for this. And so he started really digging into what like habitual habits he was using that were straining his voice, and he developed this whole technique around use of self and how to inhibit those things, those postures that really don't help us. And so there is a methodology for memorization that incorporates his teachings, where you actually lay on the floor and you like find total release basically, and you allow your body to be in somewhat of a meditative state, and then you start verbalizing your text, and that being in that state of rest and sort of like in between consciousness, and then also saying the text can really help you internalize it. And I mean, and not to dwell on this, but you know, some roles, there's a lot of text, right? So I mean, how much time do you give yourself? Like, I mean, if it's, I don't know how you guys measure it, but in terms of pages or lines, or, if there's a number, let's say you've got 1,000 lines, let's just say. I mean, how much time do you have to budget to be comfortable with knowing that you're ready to go for the first, live rehearsal? I think, unfortunately, it just really depends on the person. And there are some people who memorize so easily. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I was watching an interview of, it wasn't Rory Culkin. It was one of the Culkin brothers.
Uh-huh.
And he was talking about how since he's been acting since he was a child, he can basically read something once and he's got it memorized.
Yeah.
And he worked with another actor who, forgive me, I've forgotten which one it was,
Yeah.
but he spends ages memorizing.
Right.
And he has like a very laborious practice for it, and he was furious.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was furious at
Well,
this
just
man.
as some people have those natural talents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on the person. I think everybody develops their own practice and technique for it. But I don't know if you wanted to speak
No,
on
that
it.
pretty much covers
Well,
him.
Faith Kern, what are the personality characteristics of a good director?
Personality characteristics?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's...
Just describe yourself.
Okay, well... No, I've never even thought about that.
Do you get to have a choice of what your director's like?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
don't-
when I say, I mean, because there's a director, it implies direction, telling
Yeah.
other people to
Yeah, okay.
get.
Okay, that gives me...
That was
gives
deep.
me
That
some
was very
things.
deep. Yeah. But
very deep.
but I mean, what I mean to say is that if you're trying to give people direction and they're kind of off doing this, that, and the other thing, and
Yeah,
don't you have to be kind of a
You need to be a leader.
Yeah, okay.
You have to have some leadership qualities,
Right.
or it's just not going to go your way. It's not going to go well.
uh-huh.
And I've seen directors that do not have leadership qualities that it's like, oh, yeah, this is
Right.
rough. It's rough for everyone. So definitely having some leadership skills is very important. I think knowing your vision is also really important. It's not really a characteristic, but it's a preparation thing. Really knowing exactly what you want and what your goal is in telling the story is important. But then also being flexible to let the actors or costumers or techs also have some creative freedom in that. Yeah, I think those are the things that come to mind.
Is the director, I mean, we talked about the relationship between the playwright and the actor, but what's the relationship between the playwright and the director? I mean, is the director sort of an intermediary between the playwright and the actor, or what is that, what's that dynamic?
I mean, the director is the interpreter, really, of the writer's vision. So it's kind of up to them to, I mean, you
Can I
are...
give- I have an example,
Okay.
I think, that goes along with this. So there was a scene in Silent Sky that the director was giving me her intention and direction or whatever. But she had also told us, if you have a different idea, you can come in and you can give it to me. And she's like, I've worked with directors where I have fought for my vision or whatever, but ultimately it's up to the director to decide. So there was a scene where I came in and I presented an alternative interpretation. Unfortunately, what I didn't know ahead of time was that she actually expected me to have it fleshed out and perform it on stage in order to try to convince her, and I wasn't ready to do that. But she's like, so it was, but ultimately it's the director's call. And
So there is that hierarchy
Yeah.
there where it's the actor, then the director, and then
Yeah.
the playwright, be he alive or dead, I suppose, right? Yeah.
Right.
So the other kind of thing, analogy I was thinking about too when it comes to the director is sort of like, you've got like the coach of the football team
Yeah.
who's supposed to come up with the game plan and strategy and all that, but then he's also supposed to like inspire people.
Yep.
Is that kind of like similar at all to the role of the director?
Yeah, I would say so, for sure. Like a coach type person.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like there was times in the show that we just did where I was struggling
Yeah.
mentally with what we were doing, just memorizing and remembering blocking, and I was just having a hard time. And Frankie was very much like the coach type that like, hey, it's fine, we're gonna get through it. It's definitely like good to have a little empathy and to be able to know that it's gonna come together.
Yeah.
And also the
And
director
encourage.
has the full picture, the actor has their own set of problems or whatever.
Right.
and the director has, like I can remember too, it wasn't until like about a week before we performed that we had a full run through, and we really got to feel the full arc of the show, as you know, and see everything or whatever. But the director sort of had the whole picture, even though the actors were only there for their scenes or whatever.
And do you ever have to get into situations where you really need to get something out of the actor, so you make them feel uncomfortable?
Well, isn't that just? No. No.
Okay, because that, like, you hear these stories
Yep.
of, especially like movie industry and stuff, and like the
Yes.
director screaming at the
Yes.
actor, and that's what I wanted, like perfect, like like the like really anger them or something, and then and it was all intentional, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you don't do any of that psychiatric manipulation or whatever.
No. I think it's better to have an honest conversation.
Okay.
No actor is trying to do a bad job.
Right.
They don't want to look bad on whether it's camera or film. LOL.
Yeah.
Film or live theater. Nobody's wanting to look bad or do a bad job. So,
Right.
so as long as there's trust between the director and the actor, which is
Yeah.
very important,
Right.
building that trust. As long as there's trust, you should be able to have an open conversation. And Frankie should be able to tell me as an actor,
Yeah.
hey, this is not working. Here's what I need
Right.
from you.
I think there are also, you kind of develop a language with each person and figure out what works for them. And there are, I think something that's kind of feels nebulous to people about acting, but I found a lot of comfort in training, was that there is actually quite a bit of structure that you can add to it. It's not so nebulous as just like, oh, you have to go like figure out how to be somebody that you're not and tell the truth. There are techniques and there is structure and there are there's language for it. So as the director, which it depends on who the director is and what their experience is, I think it's great to have experience acting if you're going to be directing, because that does give you some framework of I want this from them.
I've been there
and this
before.
is what it looks like to me, and I'm trying to get something out of them, but it's not the same on their side. So how do I talk to them about it from their side and give them the motivation and the inspiration that they need to give me what I'm looking for, and not go and like threaten them or scare them or whatever.
Well, you just hear these stories, especially But I guess some directors probably get kind of egotistical and they say, I don't really care what this actor wants.
Right.
I'm going to get this out of the actor whether they want it or not, right?
I think there are, I don't agree with them, but I think there's probably acting books out there that talk about directors provoking. I know that I've had conversations with the theater people over in Central Lakes College in our classes and stuff where the director or the professor was talking about how there are techniques that some directors have been taught to use to provoke something out of the actor, and he's like, I don't think that's healthy. It's not healthy.
Well, I think it's also different. Like a lot of those stories come from film directors, where they're just looking for that one take.
Right.
They're wanting you to do it right now in this moment, and then it's done.
Oh, that's a good point.
Whereas in theater, like it has to be in you.
Right.
You have to be able to keep doing it night after night after night.
Great point.
Rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal, and attacking an actor, not probably your best bet. I think also, like, if you're looking for a one-off in a film situation, like, the actor might understand it after seeing the take back or something like that, whereas theater, like, you're never going to see it, so you have no idea. So I think they're kind of two different worlds.
I think also,
go ahead.
You have to also be prepared for this to be somebody's job. Like, this is potentially a career if you are doing this professionally. And in what other career would just screaming at your employees be appropriate? Some probably
sports.
think
I think
but generally, I don't think that makes for a. There's no longevity to that.
Right.
You're just damaging employees.
Well,
at
it's
that
can
point.
you go through this?
Right. How long is this sustainable
Right.
before somebody is no longer?
Are you
able
tough
to
enough
do
to
this?
be an actor in my show?
Right. Yeah, and then what does your reputation as a director become? And so I think
that depends, right? I mean, it depends on the success of the show.
it absolutely does.
Well, in
And
Park Rapids, Minnesota,
I was gonna say
live theater.
I think that that with the stakes
There's a
being
cap.
what they are here, and for
Right.
us, I think there's not really much concern with putting that much emphasis on final product.
What about good acting versus not good acting? How is it possible to differentiate? Because like some people will watch a production or something and they'll say, wow, that was such great acting. What a great job that person did. And then another person will watch something else, a movie, a play, or something like that, and say, "Oh, that person was a terrible actor. They had no business being up there." What are some of the things that we can look for as people who want to enjoy it and observe it, where we could be more, I don't know, have better taste, Like, they say with wines or something, they say learn the vintages or learn, or is it all just nonsense and it's basically just you like what you like?
I think that there's some of both.
Yeah.
I think for myself, and I've actually wondered about this myself, because there is a degree of okay, if I'm going to call myself an actor and I'm going to be a trained actor, then I feel like I should know what good acting is.
Right.
And I think that in a way that can kind of be a trap, because it's at the end of the day, it's still art, it's still subjective. But also, I think what a lot of us are looking for, and even if we can't tell that it's what we're seeing or not seeing, I think that this is what indicates good acting or not good acting, is truth. We're looking for truth, and we're looking for, can I see myself in that person? Is that how someone would actually react in that situation?
Yeah.
And there's a degree of variability on that. But I think that is really what it kind of comes down to, is can I believe this? And then what structure is it within? If I'm watching Alice in Wonderland, no, I probably can't really believe it, but I can believe it within the world that's created for me to view it in. So I think we're looking for believability and truth.
Yeah, because there's such a thing as overacting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
And sometimes people are going for that too.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing, is really looking at the context and looking at, what style of project is this? Is this absurdist art? Are they trying to be over the top? Are they trying to be unrealistic? And then how well did they do with that? Because maybe they absolutely nailed that, in which case they did a great job.
Okay, I know we've been on the topic of acting for a while, so let's move off it for a minute here. So when it comes to Kitchen Sink, obviously you've done your first production, The Two Rooms. I wasn't able to see it because I was out of town that weekend, and but I feel bad about that. But next time that you guys do one, obviously. But so, what goes into the process of selecting the play that you're going to be doing?
They're laughing because we're struggling to select our second play right now.
We struggled to
Is it a
select the first
democratic
one.
process, or is there a dictator, or how does that?
No, it's not either of those things.
It's a scramble. It's a scramble. That's
So
the right word.
I'm going to put out the beginning
Yeah.
of Two Rooms, and then you guys will have to fill in because I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I was exposed to Two Rooms over at CLC
Okay.
by the new head of the theater Performing Arts Center.
Yep.
He just exposed me to it in some free acting workshops that he led or whatever. And I liked it, and I bought it, and I read the script or whatever, and we were looking for our first one, and I showed it to Faith and Frankie, and I don't really know what attracted you guys to that one. How did we decide to do that
It was a
one?
powerful story. I think when we were looking for something packing a punch, if you will, something with few characters, with very minimal set, that we could do and do well. And it kind of checked all of the boxes, and so that's why we chose it.
Yeah.
It seemed the story seemed relevant.
So it started with an idea from one of the board members, and then it was kind of shared with the others, and then a consensus was reached.
At least between the artistic directors.
Yes.
I mean, we don't consult the whole board.
Okay.
They wouldn't want to be in charge of choosing a show.
No, we barely want to be in charge of acting.
So is there any thought that's put into, sort of like you guys mentioned before, we're in Park Rapids, Minnesota, town of 4,000 people. Are you looking more for productions that are going to be digestible by such a population, or are you really just going to try to put on whatever kind of play you want to put on? for your own reasons?
I
Digestible.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like it's kind of a bit of both.
Okay.
Because I feel like the stuff that we are really interested in bringing, there is interest in, there's just not a lot of opportunity so far. And also, I think that an important tenet of what we want to do as a company is bring topics and issues into conversation and do it in a way that is approachable, that people can hear without feeling attacked, or without it feeling like highbrow or untouchable to them in some way. We want to make it very approachable, make it easier for people here to have access to conversation about these things. And some of it is probably going to be a little bit of a push for some people in the community. I mean, you have widespread of views and perspectives on things around here. And so I think that there's always going to be somebody who's, wishing it had been different than it was.
Well, yeah.
But I think for the most part, we want to stay respectful and relevant and
Thought-provoking.
thought-provoking.
I mean, that's still, I mean, to me, the best plays or, any kind of theatrical production are those that where the conversation continues well after the thing's been over, right?
That's the goal. Right.
Okay. So it's kind of the idea is to get people to talk and think about ideas.
Yeah, and to feel comfortable coming and talking to us and talking to each other and having common ground. Based
Which
off
we
of
saw
what they
after
saw.
2 rooms, which is super rewarding.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's your sort of ideal audience then?
Everybody.
For now.
We want everybody.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of people in this area who are already looking for performing art opportunities to go to. And we know a lot of them already. So I think that what we're kind of focusing on is finding the people that we don't already know, reaching them, getting the word out to them. I think a lot of our focus that we've tried to focus on with marketing is going more toward millennials, younger generations, because we don't see them getting involved and engaged as much. So that's something that we're really interested in doing more outreach in that area.
What's kind of your geographical target area there for that?
Because
we don't have any like around here. We don't really have a ton of young people, right?
We've done a bit of a widespread. I mean, as far as like social media marketing, which I did a lot of for 2 rooms, I kind of went as far out as like Brainerd, Fargo, Walker,
Bemidji.
Bemidji, and like Frazee, Perham.
It's kind of like how far do we travel to see
Right,
a show?
yeah.
We travel to Fargo to see a show. We travel to Brainerd to see a show. So
That's a good way to.
it's if we're willing to go that far, we assume that there's probably others out there that are also willing to go that far.
Yeah. And so engaging an audience, building a following. You're doing some marketing.
Yep.
And probably all word of mouth too, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Being important. Yeah. Do you have like social media that you're using to promote it?
Yes, mostly Facebook. We do have an Instagram, although we don't really have a heavy base there, so we don't use it as thoroughly. But Facebook is the main place to stay like up to date with
And our website.
things like that. And then our website. And we have photos from all of the stuff from 2 rooms as well, so people can go check out what we've already done. And
Yeah. Okay. And what's the Facebook handle or whatever? I mean, I'm sure there's probably a few kitchen sinks out there, but
is it just
Kitchen Sink?
Productions?
I think it's Kitchen Sink Productions.
I'm pretty sure it's Kitchen Sink Productions. On
Somebody
Facebook.
typed in the search bar in Facebook Kitchen Sink Productions, they'd probably land on yours.
Yes,
Maybe?
they.
Are we-
I mean,
Hopefully.
we are in
Yeah.
the Park Rapids area, so if you're in Park Rapids, it might be
Yeah,
more
because that's
likely that you'll
locally
find
targeted
us.
and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you
you
see
go
our
to
logo, you'll be
kitchensinkproductions.org.
Yep.
There's a link
Oh.
there,
There
to,
is a link to our
the
social
Facebook.
media.
So
Kitchen Sink Productions
dot
.org.
Yep.
Okay.
that might be easier. Or
So
more direct.
what kind of changes would you guys like to see in the theater industry generally?
In the whole one or
industry?
Yeah.
here? Oh,
Well, they say
whole
be the change that you want to see in the
Sure.
world, right?
Sure.
So what kind of changes would you like to see?
I actually do kind of have a comment, and this might be completely redundant because maybe this is already the direction that theater in general is going toward. But I would say accessibility to people and approachability, not just accessibility as far as like, can I go to this show? Can I afford to go to this show?
Yeah.
Is this show near me? But the content itself, like how much can I relate to this? How comfortable am I sitting here in the audience and viewing this? And can I watch this and not feel like the story is trying to attack me? And can I view it and have my feelings about it and be allowed to be the person that I am, and then still have an opinion about it after that I can share and talk about. So, and not to say that that's not already happening by any means. I'm sure that it is in many places. I think in more rural areas, that's not as accessible to people. So I think that's a big thing that I want to see, and that is part of the change that we are a part of right now.
And how do the people benefit from this?
I think it allows, well, specifically in rural areas, it allows people a language to start talking about things that they weren't already talking about, and some sort of a framework to have an opinion on something that they maybe didn't even know about before, or they didn't think that they were allowed to have an opinion about, or just to recognize like, oh, this is a room full of other audience members who are all saying the same thing as me, and
Echo chamber.
yeah, like we can all have something to share about. Yeah.
But I think it's also bringing stories that maybe not everyone can relate to, but it's still important that it's a part of our world. I think that's how I look at the show that we just did, Two Rooms. Like, I wasn't even alive when this topic was, with this specific instance that this writer was writing about happened. I wasn't even here. But it's still a relevant story that we can use that same framework and that same takeaways from the show in conflicts that are happening today. So it's also, but I don't specifically have any experience with that topic, but that's something that's still happening to people today. So it's also bringing the ability to empathize with people in the world. And I think that is really important in such a digital age.
Right.
Say that.
Yeah,
And I'm so
disconnected.
old, but-
Everybody kind of sits at their computer and watches.
we can all have for like what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Like, we can all have opinions and whatever, but we're not there. We have no. I should say, am not there. I have no business knowing what's going on or having specific opinions about it. But like, if I can take a specific character that I've just seen in a show and see truth happening in that character about that experience that they had, like, it suddenly gives me
A window
to be able to realize what that experience is
so it's
like.
not just some abstract news story that everybody reads about and they say,
then,
well, I'm on this side or I'm on that side for the following reasons.
Right.
But this
it's
kind of puts it a personal
opinion.
right.
It's a personal
humanizing the topic or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
I also think that a really great thing about theater as opposed to any other medium is that it actually forces people to get out of their house and go somewhere and have a nice evening, right? I mean, not just that, like it's not just mere entertainment, but I mean, I think, like you're talking about in the context of memorization, it's like using your body to go, you go and move and go somewhere.
And with other people, which I think is also important.
Yeah, other people, the public, and, not just, sitting in a recliner and kicking back with a box of popcorn and watching. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not, no.
But I think there's that's what's really cool about live theater is that there's that sort of, it's live and everybody's there and it's exciting.
Yeah. It's an energy exchange that you don't get from being at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I, for one, am very glad that you guys are doing this because it adds to the community so much. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the what's next from you guys. Which, by the way, it sounds like you don't have a consensus on that yet. But
Not
do you
yet.
We
have
have
a
a stack of scripts that
That's
we're going
right.
through.
do you have a timetable? Do you have a deadline?
We have, yes, yes, we do.
We do have a deadline.
What is that
Yes.
deadline?
Really soon.
Yeah.
Well, we have performance dates chosen that hopefully will work out.
And
for
what are
us.
those?
So we would like to perform our next show at the Depot again, March 7th through the 16th.
Okay.
So auditions are currently planned to be January 29th through February 1st, but that is very tentative at this point.
All of that's tentative.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
A general time frame, somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
Okay, so March will be
There
the
you
next.
go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
and we are hoping to expand to 2 weekends instead of just one
Yeah.
this time. So, our debut was, we really didn't, we was trying everything. Everything was the very
Everything's
first
new.
time of
Yeah.
doing anything. So
Yeah. You have to kind of, look at that and say, okay, well, these are the things we did right, and these are the things we'd like to do differently. And then
Mhm.
every time you do it, you
Right.
just do something better.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And is it going to be? You think it's going to be sort of the same size production in terms of actors and sets and all that stuff, or?
That will really depend on which script we choose.
Right now, we don't know enough about the actor pool here because, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a specific, unique thing about what we're doing is we want to work in the off season to provide more options for people to participate in theater during the off season. And then that also comes with the struggle of there are less people here, and so
Yeah.
there's less people to get involved. So we were very fortunate that Brian Hobson was able to be involved in 2 rooms, because other than that, it was us and our family members.
Yeah, in the middle of some kind of a political campaign. He was
Yeah,
able to
I
do
know.
that, right?
Yeah, we were very lucky.
Awesome.
We were
Yes.
very lucky to get him
Uh-huh.
to be a part of it. And for the next one, we'll see. We'll see who we can get to be a part of it.
It will still be a small cast.
Yeah, we'll have to be because yeah,
That is a limitation here.
yeah.
It is, yes. So that's part of why kitchen sink realism sort of works too, is because
Yeah.
they're usually small casts. And
So you all obviously are doing this here, so I would take it that you like it here? You like being here? So you're here.
Yes, we are.
here.
We sure are. Yes, we are.
What
Back
do
to
you,
you, Zach.
What do you like about this area? You. What do you like about this area?
I feel there was a long time in my teenage years when I was in my rebel phase, and I was really ready to leave, and I was like, I gotta get out of this
Yeah.
small town, and I actually live in Monaga, which is even smaller, and I was really ready to go, and then I did, and I went to New York, and I lived in Minneapolis, I lived in Oregon.
Where'd you live in New York?
I lived in Manhattan for the most part. I kind of apartment jumped.
Okay.
So I lived in a number of different places and once in Brooklyn. But most of
Yeah.
the time I was living in Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, there's there's a lot to experience there. And I think that can be a great option for anyone who's from a small town. Go try something like that. And my first year at school, I did really enjoy it. And then I was at school during COVID, so I took 2 years off actually before I went and completed my degree. And then when I went back in 2022, and then I graduated in 23, I had just changed and grown so much as a person, and I didn't enjoy it there as much anymore, and I was ready to come back to somewhere where I felt I could spread out more.
Well, I mean, I had the same experience. I lived in New York for But what do you appreciate then about coming back to this area?
I do. I love the space,
Yeah.
and mostly I'm referring to the woods. I love to just go be able to be in the woods, and that was actually I lived in northern Manhattan near Fort Tryon Park, and I loved that park. That was my favorite place in the whole city because it was the place that I felt I could be most.
It's
at
like Washington
home.
Heights, right?
Yep. And there were times when I could get enough quiet and see enough trees that I was like, okay, it's like I'm at home a little bit. And so coming back here, it was like, okay, I don't have to struggle to feel like I can be alone with my thoughts. And And that is something that I really like about being here. Also driving.
Mm-hmm.
I do like driving.
Yeah. That's nice.
It is
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's a luxury until
You're on the
somewhere else.
subway for 45 minutes
Yeah.
to go 8 miles, and you're like, well, this is
yeah.
silly.
Where is that at? Was that on the A train up there that you get on? Or
I would,
ACE or something
I
like
would
that?
take the
Yeah.
A down and then
Yeah.
switch to like the D
Yeah.
train to get to, my school was in,
Where was your school?
my school was Madison and 31st.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like right in the middle of
That's
everything.
like Madison Square Garden almost, like, right?
Yeah,
Close
yeah,
there? Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't like the commuting
Yeah.
there. There were things I loved the subway at first,
Yeah.
and then you get to where you're like, oh yeah, it's like I can.
Yeah,
surf
you
on the
get
subway,
attacked
feel
for
really
like the
cool.
5th time, or
Right, exactly.
spit on,
Somebody's
or
screaming
yeah.
at you at 8 in the morning about you're
then you
going
say,
to hell.
This is
and
getting
you're like,
old.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't have that experience here, and that I do love.
Keep it up, Park Rapids.
Yeah, yeah.
You ever get on one of those subway cars and you walk out, like it's like really crowded, and you're like, well, you see one, there's like, oh, there's nobody on this one. I'm just gonna get on.
Oh, yeah. And then you find out why there's nobody on that car. Yeah, don't go on the empty car. Don't go on the empty car.
Yeah,
if you're in New York.
because there's usually a person
violent
sitting
person
on it.
sitting
Either
in
a violent
there, or
person or a really smelly
smelly
person.
person. Yep.
You learn those things.
You
Go
do.
to the crowded one.
Well, what about you, Faith?
I have grown to also love the woods. Hard when you're just coming out of high school to love this place.
Yeah.
You do feel very claustrophobic and
Well, and not to
suffocated.
mention that you go to Walmart and you see everyone you
Everyone.
graduated.
Sure.
with.
It's
So
just
that's
not-
terrible.
Yeah.
sometimes you don't want that. You know, yes.
It's
So I
not.
moved
It's
to
not like
Minneapolis.
Cheers. Like you want to go where
No.
everybody knows your name.
No, I mean sometimes you do want
Yeah.
that. Sometimes you do,
Uh-huh.
but when that's all you've experienced,
Yeah.
you don't want it anymore.
Right.
So highly recommend leaving for a while, and then
Yeah.
you'll probably want to come back. Maybe not.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
I left. I went to Minneapolis for 1 year. Jake and I were dating, my now husband, during that time, and he also moved and hated it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big part of me coming back. I probably would still be in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not post-COVID. I'm not sure how that all would have worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's my main reason for being here is
Yeah.
he likes it here.
For love.
For love.
Yeah.
I'm here
Okay.
for love. But, I mean, we built our house, so I
Yeah.
love that. We have 2 dogs, so I love that.
What kind of
That
dogs
wouldn't
do
be
you have?
happening. We have Australian Shepherds.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. They need space.
Yeah.
So wouldn't have them if I was in
I knew that,
Minneapolis.
but I just had to ask that because
Right, they don't know.
They don't know.
They
that.
don't know. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
the woods. I think that there is something to be said about your ability to kind of make your own path in such a small town. Like I had friends in Minneapolis that I worked with in theater there that were starting a theater company from the ground up, and it's not going anymore because it's a totally different market, totally different feeling. It's different. It's harder to start something down there because it's just so concentrated. There's so much of it. So many people are trying to do the same type of thing. Venues are expensive. Like you don't have the support, as much of a support system as our community gives to us. This wouldn't be happening the way that it's happening if we were trying to do this somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I love about being here is like there's a really supportive community, specifically for doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Lorri, give you the final word. Are you from this area?
Well, Zach, here's the story. I started life not far from where you started life.
Sacramento, California?
You started in Sacramento, California.
Uh-huh.
I was born not far from there.
Uh-huh.
And my father was he was in hydroelectric power. So for the first 11 years of my life, we lived in a lot of very remote mountain little places where the companies would build like 1 or 2 houses. And so my parents, I don't remember all of this. I remember very long 20-minute drives from wherever we lived to Sacramento on windy roads or whatever before some reservoir was made and flooded and whatever and stuff. And so anyway, I grew up in the mountains far from home or whatever. And then just before I turned 11, we moved to a town. And then I eventually went to college in Montana. And then I was like a gypsy in the Pacific Northwest for several years.
Did you spend some time in Wyoming too?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I lived for several years. I had a first marriage, and I was in Wyoming and back and forth to Ketchikan, Alaska, sliming salmon and whatnot, and going to a couple colleges, and and then eventually after that marriage, after I got divorced, I went to, my sister then was going to school at the University of Idaho in Moscow, and I went there, and yes, I saw that podcast also.
Yes.
Finished my degree there, and by that point I was very passionate about wildland fire. I started a master's for teaching wildland fire science, fire behavior and stuff. But by then I had met my husband now, Kelly, and he needed to move back here with his family, and my master's program didn't transfer. So so that's how I ended up here. And when we bought our house,
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we bought our house,
Beautiful.
I remember Steve Cockey was our banker when we went in for our closing, and he's like, "Okay, I need you to list all the places you've lived in the last 10 years."
Oh, boy.
And I'm writing,
Yeah.
and I'm writing. He's like, "You're a gypsy." I'm like, "Yes, I am. I have not settled down." And so now I've lived here for like 20 some years, and it's like, I'm just here.
Okay.
So I'm rootless, but I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. So you're permanently here temporarily.
I love everywhere. Yes, the world is my oyster.
Right. Yeah, that it is. Okay. Well, Faith, Frankie, and Lorri, it's been really great having you on the podcast and just getting to know a little bit about you and your work. And like I said before, I'm really excited about Kitchen Sink and all the productions that you guys are going to be doing here in the area. And I hope that when you get something set up in March, you guys maybe come back on and we can talk about it.
Oh, that would be
let's.
fun.
Yeah,
Thank
that'd
you
be
for
awesome.
having us, and I hope you'll come to some of our acting workshops because I think you'd really like
I would. I'm interested in it. I have a fascination with it. You know?
Yeah.
So yes, I would like to do that. So please let me know when you're doing that
Sure.
too. So, all right, Kitchen Sink. Thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.